Aprilia RSV4 versus Ducati and Superbike. The Superbike nobody talks about enough. Imagine hearing a V4 screaming behind you. You can't see the bike yet. The sound gets closer, louder, sharper. Then suddenly, an Italian superbike flashes past and disappears down the road. That bike is the Aprilia RSV4. And here's what's interesting. When people talk about the world's best superbikes, the same names usually dominate the conversation. Ducati, BMW, Kawasaki. But there's another machine sitting right there with them. A motorcycle with a 1,099 cubic centimeter V4 engine, 220 horsepower, 127 newton meters of torque, advanced electronics, serious aerodynamics, and racing technology built into almost every part of the machine. Yet somehow, the Aprilia RSV4 still doesn't get talked about enough. So why is that? And what makes this Italian superbike so special? Let's take a closer look. First, let's establish exactly what we're talking about. The current 2026 Aprilia RSV4 Factory uses a 1,099 cubic centimeters, 65-degree V4 engine. It produces 220 horsepower at 13,000 revolutions per minute and 127 newton meters of torque at 10,800 revolutions per minute. Those aren't numbers from an old race bike. This is a road-legal superbike built for modern performance. Aprilia, and the numbers are impressive, but the way this engine delivers that power is what really matters. Twist the throttle. The V4 responds immediately. The revs climb. The motorcycle starts pulling harder. And as the engine moves toward the top of its rev range, the entire character of the bike changes. This isn't just acceleration, it's an experience. You feel the engine through the chassis. You hear the V4 getting louder, and the scenery starts moving past you much faster than you expected. Now think about that for a second. You're sitting on a motorcycle producing 220 horsepower. There's no car body around you, no huge cabin separating you from the road. Every acceleration goes directly through the machine beneath you. That's why superbike performance feels so different from even a very fast car. But here's where things get interesting. Power is only useful if you can control it, and that's where the RSV4 starts showing its real character. Aprilia has spent years developing motorcycles around racing, but you don't need to study the company's racing history to understand what that means. You can feel it in the motorcycle. The riding position is focused. The fuel tank is shaped around the rider. The foot peg position is designed for aggressive riding, and the chassis is built around precision. Imagine approaching a fast corner. You brake. The motorcycle settles. You turn in. The bike leans. You reach the apex. Then you start opening the throttle. That entire sequence is what the RSV4 is designed for. Not just going fast in a straight line, going fast while the road is constantly changing. And this is the part most people miss. The RSV4 isn't simply a powerful engine attached to two wheels. It's a complete performance system. Now let's talk about the electronics. The RSV4 uses Aprilia's APRC electronics package, working with a 6-axis IMU and ride-by-wire throttle management. Depending on the configuration, the system can manage traction control, wheelie control, engine braking, riding modes, slide control, quick shifting, and cornering ABS. But don't get distracted by the list. Here's what actually matters. Imagine you're exiting a corner. The motorcycle is still leaned over. You start opening the throttle. Underneath you, that V4 is producing serious torque. The rear tire has to put all that power onto the pavement. The electronics are constantly helping manage what's happening. They don't ride the motorcycle for you. You still control the throttle. You still choose the line. You still make the decisions. The technology is there to help you use the performance more effectively. And this is where things get serious. Because once you have this much power, control becomes just as important as acceleration. Then there's the part you might not fully appreciate while the bike is sitting still: aerodynamics. At normal road speeds, most riders don't think much about airflow, but at superbike speeds, air becomes a serious force. The RSV4 uses integrated aerodynamic surfaces and wing elements designed to manage that airflow and increase stability at high speed. The idea is simple. As the motorcycle gets faster, you want the front end to remain planted and predictable. The aerodynamic surfaces help generate additional vertical load and improve front-end grip. So when you're approaching a fast corner, the aero isn't just making the bike look like a race machine. It's helping the motorcycle stay composed, and that's why the bodywork looks the way it does. The shapes aren't random. The fairings are designed around airflow. The rider position is designed around control, and the aerodynamic elements are integrated into the overall shape of the motorcycle. Aprilia says the dual-layer wing surfaces beneath the windscreen were developed using MotoGP experience and wind tunnel work to improve vertical load and front-end grip. Purely says that's the kind of detail that separates styling from engineering. Now combine that aerodynamic stability with the chassis and brakes. The current RSV4 Factory uses a twin-spar aluminum frame, electronically controlled Ulan suspension, and Brembo high-pure radial front calipers with 330mm discs. Aprilia. But the important part isn't the equipment list, it's confidence. You brake hard. The front end needs to stay controlled. You turn. The chassis needs to communicate what the tires are doing. You accelerate. The rear tire needs to handle the V4's power. Everything has to work together. That's what makes a superbike feel precise, and that's exactly what Aprilia was chasing with the RSV4. Then you hear it. The V4, we've already heard it screaming down the road, but listen to it at different RPM. At lower speeds, there's a deep mechanical character. As the revs rise, the sound becomes sharper. Then the V4 starts screaming. And suddenly, you understand why the engine is such a huge part of the RSV4's personality. But the design deserves attention too. The RSV4 isn't shaped simply to look expensive. The entire motorcycle is designed around the rider. The fuel tank helps position the bodywork manages airflow, the riding position supports aggressive cornering, and the aerodynamic surfaces are integrated into the fairing rather than looking like separate pieces stuck onto the bike. Even the current factory model uses a full LED lighting signature and a 5-inch color TFT display, combining modern technology with the aggressive shape of the motorcycle. It looks fast standing still, but there's a catch. The RSV4 isn't for everyone. The riding position is demanding. The engine can generate serious heat, maintenance won't be cheap, and on normal public roads, most riders will never come close to using the motorcycle's full capability. If you want comfort first, there are better options. If you want practicality, there are better options. If you want a relaxed everyday motorcycle, there are easier choices. The RSV4 asks you to make compromises, but that's also why people buy machines like this. You're not buying it simply to get from one place to another. You're buying the feeling, the sound, the response, the design, the connection between rider and machine. And that brings us to the biggest question. Why doesn't everyone talk about the Aprilia RSV4? Because it doesn't have the same mainstream attention as some of the most famous superbikes. But look at what you're actually getting. A 1,099 cubic centimeter V4, 220 horsepower, 127 Newton meters of torque, advanced rider electronics, integrated aerodynamic technology, a race-focused chassis, Elan suspension on the factory, Brembo braking hardware, and an engine character that is difficult to confuse with anything else. Aprilia. That's a serious motorcycle. And here's the crazy part. The RSV4 doesn't need to be the most famous bike in the parking lot. It just needs to be one of the best. That's where the RSV4 becomes interesting. It's for the rider who doesn't necessarily want the obvious choice. Someone who wants Italian design, a V4 engine, serious cornering ability, modern technology, and a motorcycle that still feels special every time the engine starts. The RSV4 may not be the first superbike name people mention, but once you actually look at the machine, that starts to become difficult to understand because the ingredients are all there. Power, control, aerodynamics, braking, technology, and personality. So, is the Aprilia RSV4 worth talking about? Absolutely. It's not just another motorcycle with a big horsepower number. The engine gives it the speed, the chassis gives it precision, the brakes give it confidence, the electronics help manage the performance, the aerodynamics help keep it stable, and the V4 gives the entire machine its personality. Put all of that together, and you get something very difficult to ignore. Maybe that's why the RSV4 is so interesting. While everyone is talking about the obvious superbike choices, Aprilia has built a machine that can stand in the same conversation without needing to copy them. It has its own engine, its own character, its own riding experience, and its own reason to exist. That's why the Aprilia RSV4 is the superbike nobody talks about enough, because once that V4 starts screaming, the motorcycle doesn't need an introduction. It speaks for itself. Now I want to know what you think. Would you take the Aprilia RSV4 over a Ducati Panigale V4 or BMW M 1000RR? Let me know in the comments and subscribe to MotoVision Bikes for more superbikes.